So this module or this video lecture is for our module number 10. So this is entitled the RHEA approach to database modeling. So later on we will be learning about what RHEA approach means. Okay, so for our content or discussions, so we will be presenting the RHEA approach, how to develop it, and how to create the enterprise-wide RHEA model. Okay, so to start with, let us discuss about the RHEA approach. Basically, this is an accounting system can be examined through other models. Okay, so some of them we have already discussed in the previous modules that we have. So a popular alternative is this RHEA model. So RHEA, actually, this is an acronym. Okay, for R stands for resources, E stands for events, and A stands for agents. So this RHEA model view accounting data collection as a system in collecting the data related to the resources of the enterprise, the events, economic events specifically, and the agents within the business processes. So agents, later on we will learn who are these agents, okay, that is involved in this model. Okay, so an example of event, of course, is an economic event such as sale. So the resources exchanged in this transaction or event are inventory and cash, okay, in a sale transaction. So the seller gives inventory to the buyer, and the buyer in return pays cash, okay, for the inventory. So this is the resources exchanged or used in this type of event or economic transaction. So in this transaction also, the agents here are our company or the seller, and the customer or the buyer. Okay, so basically using the RHEA approach, so the resources again are the inventory and the cash that was exchanged. The event is the sale transaction, and the agents are our company or seller and the buyer. So in this model, it suggests that the basic data collection should be based on the resources, events, and agents, okay, in this exchange. So we will focus on these factors or variables. Our debit, credits, ledgers, and journals actually are not necessary in this model. So the data being collected will be stored in our database. Okay? So it can then be used in providing reports and financial statements later on. So meaning to say, it's more of an electronic way of capturing and recording the economic transactions. Okay, so it is the work already of the program in the software on how to analyze whether this resources is or belongs to debit or credit side. Okay, so later on, with just a click and some command, okay, necessary, we can create financial statements and reports out of the database. So the data included the details about, of course, the resources, events, and agents involved in the exchange. Okay, so to understand better, let us discuss each of the factors or variables used in RHEA model. So of course, from the resources, okay, so these are the assets of the company. This can also be the things of economic value or objects of exchange in the economic transactions, which is able to generate revenue, such as in our example earlier under the sale transaction. So the objects that are scarce and under control of the organization are also considered to be resources. Resources can also be tangible or intangible. assets. We have tangible and intangible assets. Your resources also do not include some traditional accounting assets. Okay, but again, depending on the entity on how they recognize it. Okay? So these are artifacts that can be generated from other primary data, for example, accounts receivable. Okay, so what about the events? In the events, in the RHEA model, events normally are phenomena that affect the changes in resources, or these are the happening, okay, or the occurrence of a transaction, for example. So our events, this is a source of detailed data in the RHEA approach to database. So basically, events, that's where the resources and agents will transpire. So without the event, so there is nothing, or there is no other the variables of RHEA model that will be present. So event is the first point that you have to take note of, okay, before we can actually use the RHEA model. Okay, so events fall actually into two groups. So we have economic and support events. So economic events, this will increase or decrease the resources. Okay, support events, on the other hand, includes controlling, planning, and other management activities, but they do not directly affect the resources. Or simply, your support events are the non-financial transactions. Okay, and for our agents in the RHEA model, so of course, agents can be individuals or departments who participate in the events. Their participation can affect the resources. They have the discretionary power to use or dispose of the resources. Agents can also be inside or from the outside of the organization. Examples are the clerks, production workers, customers, suppliers, vendors, departments, and teams. Okay, so this is how we actually define the variables of the RHEA model. Okay, for you to understand better this approach. So we have here the elemental RHEA model, okay, which shows us the relationship between these variables. So from the economic resource, of course, this is where the other variables transpire also or participate. So it may be in stock flow, for example. Okay, and then economic resources. Economic resources are the assets, okay, that flows, okay, when there is an economic event, flows to or from. Okay, and then in this economic event, the agents participates, may they be external agent or internal agents respectively. Okay, so therefore, as mentioned earlier, in our economic event, this is the point where all the other variables actually transpire. Okay, so in an economic event, there is resource that will flow to or from the entity, and there are agents who will participate. Okay, so this is how RHEA model is illustrated. Okay. So we will continue with the next topic under this module. Okay, so after we understand what RHEA model is or approach is, so how to develop, or how does an entity develop the RHEA model? So basically, they are using the view modeling. Okay, so this is a multi-step process for creating the individual RHEA model. So as a result, we have a single view of the entire database. So basically, in developing the RHEA model, it involves 4 steps. First is, we will identify the events. Okay, so here, identify the events that are to be included in the model. You can include at least 2 economic events. Okay, so that's duality. The entity can also include support events, meaning non-financial transactions. And then after identifying those events, this will be arranged in chronological arrangement or sequence, and then focus on value chain events. Okay, when we say value chain events, basically these are the processes or the departments in which the goods go through. It's a flow of transaction. Okay, that the inventory or the goods go through to be created and to be added value on it. Okay, so meaning from the moment the raw materials were purchased from the suppliers, how it was produced, along with the overhead cost and labor, until such time that it was finished and delivered finally to the customers or consumers. So that's value chain. Okay, so here in the identification of the events, normally this does not such invalid events such as bookkeeping tasks, accounting artifacts, or accounts receivable. It's still here, or this events are still present, although in RHEA model, this is these events are minimized because it is now being worked or given to the software, okay, to take charge of these events. Okay, that's why it's minimized, but it does not invalidate, okay, these processes or events. So we have here the example, okay, of arrangement of events entities in order of occurrence. Okay, so we have here the events, the sequence of events. We have verify the availability, taking of the order, shipping the product, and receiving of the cash. So this is basically a sale transaction. So verify the availability of the inventory, if that is available. Then we can take the order from the customer, and then after that we will ship the product to the customer, and the customer will be paying for the order. Okay, so that is just an example on how you identify and arrange the events chronologically. So that's for step 1. Step 2, we will identify the resources. Okay, so here the entity will identify the resources affected by the events that were identified in step 1. So each of the event should be linked to at least one resource as well. Economic events directly affect our resources, while support or non-financial or non-economic events indirectly affect the resources. Okay, for step 3, we will identify the agents. Okay, so each economic event will identify, or in the RHEA diagram, this is associated with at least 2 agents, okay, because there is duality or participants, I mean. So it can be one internal agent and one external agent. It is possible also to have only one integral agent when no exchange occur. So as with certain internal manufacturing processes, so meaning this is just, for example, a transfer of the processed goods from one department to the other. Okay, so this is step 3. Okay, so we have here an illustration. Okay, so this is the RHEA model showing the events, the related resources, and the agents. So this is the complete picture already of the RHEA model. So for example, our resources is inventory, and then the event is to verify its availability, and then the agents that is involved in this event are the customer service clerk and the customer. Okay, next, if it was verified that the inventory is available, then we will take the order of the customer. So again, resource involved here is still the inventory, and then the agents is still the customer, and then the sales representative. Okay, next, in shipping out of the inventory or the order, the resource involved here is still the inventory. Okay, and then the agents in this event of shipping the product involves the shipping clerk and the customer. And finally, upon receiving of the order by the customer, so the resources involved here is now the cash, which is paid by the customer. So the event is receiving cash, and then the agent involved is the customer and the cash receipts clerk. Okay, so this is how you design or create the RHEA model in the sale transaction. Okay, so you can see here that the resources, events, and agents in each event in a single transaction is chronologically arranged and identified. Okay, so that's how it works. We go now to step 4. Okay, for step number 4, this is where we will determine the associations and cardinalities between the entities. Okay, when we say association, this means reflecting the nature of the relationship between the two entities. This can be represented by labeled line connecting the entities. Okay, so association, it shows the relationship between two entities. Okay, so in your proposed accounting system before that you passed, you have created there the association, okay, between one entity to the other, okay, in showing how the data flow in the entity. Okay, what about cardinality? Cardinality, so this is the degree of association between the entities. It describes the number of possible occurrences in one entity that are associated with a single occurrence in the related entity. Okay. So, cardinality also reflects the business rules that are in play for a particular organization. Sometimes these rules are obvious and are same for all organizations, and sometimes they differ. For example, whether inventory items are tracked individually or as quantity on hand. Okay. So this, we have also here an illustration on how association and cardinality in RHEA diagram is created. Okay, so for example, in inventory, okay, so this is our resource. So the same transaction, okay, sales transaction that we used in the previous illustrations. So here, it will be reviewed if it is available. Okay, so verified availability is our event, and then if that is available or not, the agent involved here will respond to the customer. So the agent involved here is the customer service clerk. Okay, and then the one who requests it is the customer. Okay, so the lines here represents our association. Okay, and cardinality is again this is the degree of association between the entities. So this describes the number of possibilities that will occur. Okay, so meaning if the items are available, then the customer clerk will respond either to the customer, either that is available or not. Okay, that is an example of cardinality. If it is available, then we will take the order. If it is not available, then we will or the customer service will inform the customer that the item is not available, then they should not take the order. Okay, so that's just an example. Okay, what about many-to-many association? Okay, so this is again in relation with our cardinality. Okay, so many-to-many associations cannot be directly implemented into the relational database because they require the creation of new linking table. So many to many. Okay, this process splits the many to many association into to make it more or to make it easier or simpler. What the entity will do is to split this many to many association into one to many association. So in this case, the linking table will require composite primary key. So actually, this is more of the work of the database creator or developer. Okay, so the entity will just describe it to the developer, and he will be the one to take charge, okay, of how to implement it in the database. So this is a much technical type of part, okay, of this model actually. Okay, so we have here an illustration on how to link tables in the RHEA diagram. Okay, so actually the linking will be in this part right here, where the inventory where they will use the inventory verify link, okay, in verifying the availability of the inventory, and then inventory order link in taking the order, and then inventory ship link for shipping the product. So normally this is the database that stores all the inventory orders and ship outs, okay, to the customers of the entity. So it links there to update the data or the report. Okay. So we will continue until this topic, creating enterprise-wide RHEA model. Okay, so basically, as mentioned earlier, the entity can use view integration, which means to say that they will combine several individual RHEA diagrams into a single enterprise-wide model. As mentioned earlier, in our previous example, we take the sales transaction. So along with other transactions, individual transactions, the entity can combine all of this, okay, to make or create an enterprise-wide RHEA model. Okay. So there are 3 steps, okay, in creating the enterprise-wide RHEA model. So the first step is we will consolidate the individual models created. Okay, so merging multiple RHEA models will require first a thorough understanding of the business process and entities involved in the models. So actually this was done in the previous step in creating the individual RHEA models. So individual models are consolidated or linked together based on shared entities. So we have here, for example, procurement for expenditures and sales and revenue cycle. So they both use inventory and cash resource entities. So they can be combined later on. Okay, so we have here also an illustration, okay, on how to integrate the individual RHEA models. Okay, so we have here the purchasing clerk to take the order product, inventory, verify the availability, and then take the order. Okay, and then for the supplier, we receive the product, that's still inventory, okay, the resources. It will also be used in taking the order later on if that is available. Okay, so for the cash disbursement clerk, so they will disburse the cash in payment of the orders from the supplier, and our cash received at the same time from the customers can be used in paying for the liability, and so on. Okay, so if you could see in this illustration, we have the procurement and the sales transaction into one diagram. Okay, so this is just an example. So just imagine if we have more transactions to be linked. Okay, so this will be we will have a longer association. Okay, okay, for the whole or for the entire enterprise. So that's step 1. For step 2, we will define primary keys, foreign keys, and attributes. Basically, this is the work of the developer. Now, this is quite a technical, okay, on the IT part. Okay, so we'll just have a sort of overview of this. So in this case, there will be implementation into a working relational database requires the primary keys and foreign keys, as well as the attributes for the table. So basically, your primary key, this is uniquely identify the instance of an entity, for example, in each row in the table. Our foreign key, on the other hand, is the primary key embedded in the related table so that the two tables can be linked. Okay? And the attribute are the characteristic of the entity that will be recorded in the table. So they also use, or the developer also use, the foreign keys, okay, and primary key. They have the rules. Okay, so relations are formed by attribute that is common to both of the tables in the relation. So they also have, or they also use the assignment of foreign keys, like one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many associations. Okay, so normally the attributes, for example, in the customer. Okay, so this can be, or this can include the customer name that can be used in the table as the characteristic of the customer. So it may include customer name, address, telephone number, amount owed, value of the total sales, to date, terms of trade. So this is for the financial related attributes. For non-financial attributes, it may include the customer credit rating, the damaged goods that were recorded, on-time payment, customer volume record, EDI access, internet access, and so on. Okay, and then step 3, the entity will construct the physical database and produce the user views now. So the database designer is now ready to create the physical relational tables using the software. So once the tables have been constructed, it will be populated now with the data. So data will be encoded. So here, the entity can now have the resource agents and event tables that must wait for business transactions to occur before they can be entered, of course, because in the events there is where we get the data. So the resulting database should support also the information needs of the users. That's why SQL is used to generate the reports. Okay, so we have here the user views. Okay, so for user view number 1, from the RHEA database, okay, they can view here the past due accounts, the name, amount, and so on. For user number 2, they can create a sales report using diagrams and other forms of illustrations. Okay, so this is just an example. Okay, so value chain analysis. So basically, this is the competitive advantage from RHEA approach can be seen via value chain analysis. Value chain analysis, as mentioned earlier, value chain is where the goods or the inventory go through, okay, in the process from the moment it was purchased, produced, until it was finished and delivered to the customer. So this analysis distinguishes between the primary activities, which create value, and support activities, which assist the performance of the primary activities. So RHEA will provide a model for identifying also the differences between these activities. So this is one of the characteristics or the output of RHEA model. So prioritizing strategy means focus on primary activities and eliminate the outsource support activities. Okay, meaning in this case, the entity will be able to control also their cost at the same time. So using Porter's value chain model, so revenue and cost. So it's always our rule. Revenue should outweigh the cost, okay, in every activity. So the support activities includes firm infra or infrastructure, human resource management, and technology development, as well as procurement. So here, the primary activities are logistics operations, inbound and outbound logistics, marketing, sales, and services. So this should be the entity's focus, Okay, but however, in determining the margin, support and the primary activities should always be considered as part of the cost and expense in generating the revenue. But again, the entity should make sure that revenue outweighs the cost, okay, involved. So competitive advantages of REIA model can lead to more efficient operations, helps managers identify non-value added activities that can be eliminated, and then they will increase productivity by eliminating those non-value added activities to generate excess capacity. Storing both financial and non-financial data in the same central base will reduce the multiple data collection and storage as well as maintenance. So, competitive advantage of using REIA model. Okay, so aside from more efficient operations, detailed financial and non-financial data will support the wider range of management decisions, and it can also support multiple user views, okay, or different perspective on the problem. This will also provide managers with more relevant, timely, and accurate information, leading to better customer service, higher quality products, and flexible production processes. Okay, so those are for our REIA model.